I've had the cantina music from Star Wars stuck in my head for the last couple of days. Um, so this past Saturday, I mentioned before we have a place here in Lincoln that is called the Lead Center for the Performing Arts. It's a big, you know, it's a theater that is designed. It's a theater kind of like a Broadway theater type thing. Don't know why I need to explain it that way, but yeah, it's a theater, and they do musicals and concerts and plays and so many different things. Last year, my dad and I went to go see the Danny Elfman show. This past Saturday, we went to go see the Lincoln Symphony Orchestra play music from John Williams. It was called Road to Tatooine, and pretty much the last half after the intermission was just all Star Wars, of course, but the first half also had stuff from had the Raiders of the Lost Ark theme, which was really fun to listen to, and had stuff from Schindler's List and some other things. Um, and we had a soloist come out, played the cello, and he did a very good job on one of the things that they had. And then, the last half is just all Star Wars stuff. And as the encore, they did the cantina music from the first movie, from fifth movie, fourth movie, whatever, from A New Hope. They did the cantina music from that one, and so that was kind of fun. The director came back out and he had like a little tiny it was a little tiny lightsaber that he was using to conduct with, and like people had been in costumes in the audience and stuff like that. One family came dressed as a bunch of Mandalorian characters. The dad was dressed as Mando, the mom was dressed as Bo-Katan. I believe it was the son was dressed as Baby Yoda, and the daughter was dressed as Ahsoka. So they did a really good job with their costumes, and there are a bunch of other ones dressed up as different Star Wars characters, or at least in Star Wars costumes, and they did a good job too. I did not dress up. I just wore one of my Star Wars t-shirts. But this video is going to be the kind of a first part of two. So this one is going to be about the Grand Fleet reunions. This one is going to be about kind of the first half of the Grand Fleet, because there's 7 members of the Grand Fleet, 7 crews in the Grand Fleet. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to split these into 2. First one is going to be about Cavendish, Bartolomeo, and Sai, and then the second one will be Ideo, Leo, Herudin, and Orlumbus. In regards to like reunions that I think will happen with the Straw Hats, and also just seeing each other again. So obviously, when it gets to Cavendish and the beautiful pirates, when it comes to them, technically we saw them in Stampede. Them along with Bartolomeo, we saw them in Stampede. And so we see them interact and everything, and they're still pretty much in character in those movies, in that movie, and Bartolomeo was in Film Red, but they're pretty still in character in the movies, but Cavendish, he's still busy being chased by his fans, and a lot of people thought that the Grand Fleet was going to show up in Wano, that like they were going to see Luffy's Viva card, start burning up or something like that, with with the poison that he experienced, and he at Onigashima, or not Onigashima, at the Udon prison, and other things like that, with the with the plague bullets and things like that, and then with him fighting against Kaido and everything, with the multiple times that he got knocked out throughout the arc, particularly during the battle on Onigashima. You would think that they would have someone occasionally monitoring the Viva card. I mean, they did swear themselves, and as much as Cavendish doesn't particularly care for Luffy to begin with, he did, he joined the Grand Fleet. He knew what he was getting himself into. So, also, Cavendish and his crew do not strike me as the ones that are just going to, ransack villages. They don't strike me as that. That would ruin Cavendish's reputation. So I don't think Cavendish would quite do that. Hakuba, on the other hand, might. Cavendish, not so much. So we haven't really got much of an update as to what Cavendish is dealing with. He's, being chased around by his fans and stuff like that from the bourgeois kingdom or whatever it is, being chased around by them. Um, he's got Faru, who's the horse, and Suraimon, who's the Suraimon the Beheader, I think was his name. I don't really know what else would be going on with them. Cavendish shows up and helps the Grand Fleet with whatever ends up happening. In regards to, they show up at Laugh-Tale at some point in time. They show up, for the big battle with the Marines or the Blackbeard pirates, however that goes. It would, okay, in regards to Blackbeard, in regards to, like, I don't think Cavendish wouldn't stand up against Blackbeard. I don't know if he would do, how well he would do against any of the 10 Titanic captains or anything like that. But again, he'd be very good with dealing with the different, riffraff and stuff. You just have to have someone keep an eye out in case, Hakuba decides to make an appearance. But I wonder what Katarina Devon would think of Cavendish, because, we know that she's, the Crescent Moon Hunter, and we know that she's a serial killer when it comes to beautiful women and stuff. So I wonder what she would think of Cavendish, if she would be interested. I mean, like, yes, I know Cavendish is a guy, but, he's very beautiful. He's the Bishonen setup that they have in One Piece. We don't get those too often in One Piece, but he's definitely that setup of, the very pretty, gorgeous man and whatever. So I wonder what Katarina Devon would think of him. I'm just like, I don't expect that to really get addressed in the manga, but would she be interested in trying to get him? Would she kind of fawn over him because he's cute? Because she thinks he's handsome or something? I don't know. That popped into my head. I don't really know exactly where that would go. I could have Faru and Stronger have a race, but Stronger can fly, so that may not go too well. But Faru has etiquette. Faru has etiquette, very, very good etiquette skills. I don't think Stronger has those. But I can't really think of anyone that would really be a match that Cavendish should be able to fight in that regard. Again, if the Grand Fleet's showing up to deal with either the Blackbeard pirates or to help with the Marines, or however the case ends up going, or both at the same time possibly, I would, again, they're kind of there to deal with a lot of the riffraff, the lower level things. We might get, at the very least, we know that Blackbeard has a lot of, lots of girls on his crew that are just kind of there as part of the entourage. And they might just start fawning over Cavendish, which is just probably annoy Blackbeard. So there's that. I don't really have anything else too much to say about Cavendish. Moving on to Bartolomeo. Yeah, we saw him in Stampede, and we saw him very much being rather center stage in Film Red. I was talking to my mom about this last night, just like thinking out stuff, and I'm like, okay, so I've told you about the Grand Fleet, yes. Okay, so there's Bartolomeo. He can cross his fingers and make barriers that pop up. He was in Film Red. He was the one that kept making the barrier balls that like Luffy kept rolling around in, and she's like, oh yeah, that was funny. Film Red. So we've seen, Bartolomeo show up in those circumstances, of course, and still just completely fawn over Luffy and the other Straw Hats, of course, as the man does. Technically, canonically, the last thing we heard about him was, him and his crew showing up on an island that belonged to Shanks and burning the flag, and then forcing them to buy Luffy and Straw Hat merchandise. Oh, Bardo. Yeah, I mean, like, some of the merchandise is okay, and I wouldn't mind buying some of it, but I'm like, okay, you don't need to insult an emperor, particularly the emperor that Luffy actually likes. That probably was not your bravest or, well, not your smartest idea. We know that, like, just before Film Red, there was, of course, the moment in the manga where, Shanks and the crew kind of, sail past Wano, and he's like, okay, I kind of scared off Aramaki. What else is on the docket for today? And just like, the kid called Bartolomeo decided to attack one of our islands. I don't know. He's part of Luffy's fleet, according to the newspaper, and the very talkative blonde man with the horse. Just like that whole thing. I'm now that we've learned a little bit more about the interaction between Kid and Shanks that happened when Kid lost his arm. Now that we've learned a little bit more about that him and Shanks never actually interacted, and that it was most likely Ben Beckman that was like the cause of Kid losing his arm. I apologize for yawning. I haven't slept very well the last couple of days with the time change. I'm still getting my body adjusted to it. I hate daylight savings time. I hate springing forward for that. Sorry. I don't think that even if they did show up on the island, I don't think that it would have been Shanks that went and dealt with him, even if it was, that like Barto knows Luffy and is part of Luffy's Grand Fleet. Well, I mean, maybe that would have resulted in Shanks at least, giving Barto the opportunity to explain himself. So I do kind of still want to see that as a flashback, but most likely it would have just been they would have sent one of the others to go and deal with him, Rockstar or, I don't know, Yasopp or whatever. Actually, sending Yasopp to deal with him, well, no, because it's not really like exceedingly common knowledge that Yasopp is Usopp's father in that regard. And Barto didn't even realize that Usopp was Sogeking until Dressrosa when all of that happened. So there's that, but I don't think that would have been there. Although, admittedly, Yasopp being the one to interact with Barto would have been interesting in the fact that, would have shown up, introduced himself, maybe, shot a couple of things out of Barto's hands or shot around Barto to the point where he's like freaking out. Barto using his, barriers to protect himself, but Yasopp could have mentioned something about Usopp, or maybe Barto mentioned something about Usopp, and then that like leads to the whole thing of like, you've met my son. He's your son? Yeah, I haven't seen him for a while. How's he doing? He's fine. The last time I saw him, he was being proclaimed a god, and then climbing an elephant. Huh. Yasopp. Elephant. that would yeah. But I'm like, I don't really know too much about that. Barto, out of any of the crew that would notice stuff happening with Luffy's Viver card, which I really hope that ends up being a plot point that gets brought up later on with all of the Grand Fleet, because I don't think they have anyone monitoring the Viver card like 24/7, because that would be kind of like exceedingly overdone. Although out of all of the crews that would, it would probably be Barto's crew that would be just monitoring that dang Viver card 24/7, and the fact it was like, Luffy gave us this, we must keep it safe and observed type of thing. And out of all of them, it would have been Barto that probably would have noticed it starting to burn up. Also, it's like out there on the center of their deck, so it's not like any of the crew couldn't have seen it. And yeah, if anything, it would have been Barto probably would have been the one that noticed, regardless of whatever the situation was. It was like, follow the Viver card, and then like when it stopped, burning up, falling apart, whatever the case was, they probably waited, and then like it just kind of fixed itself, because like the Viver cards I think can like regenerate themselves once the person gets their energy back, once the person's health is restored. The Viver cards fix themselves. So I guess it's like an energy bar in a video game, or a health bar in a video game. Oh my god, they're in the red! Oh no, wait, it's going back up again. It's fixing itself, hold on. So at the very least, they probably would have started heading toward Wano. They probably wouldn't have made it there, depending on certain circumstances, but also just in regards to like however far away they were from Wano. And I mean, yeah, they have the fever cards, but also like Luffy doesn't have the ability to like contact them unless like Robin was smart enough, Robin or Frankie or Usopp, which those three would be smart enough to do this, to get like, I don't know, like the Den Den Mushi numbers for all of the different for all of them, for like all the different, you know, crew members or something like that, for, you know, the main members. But it's like, how are they going to communicate with them that they need help? That like, okay, we're ready to go, and, you know, I don't know, time to go fight Blackbeard, or time to go fight the Marines, and we want all of our, you know, all of the Grand Fleet with us. You know, I don't know. That is just something that they really need to explain. I mean, like, you know, throw in a flashback that shows, you know, Luffy and the others talking with Barto and the, you know, the Grand Fleet or whatever, and like maybe Robin, Usopp, Frankie, or whatever, because Zoro certainly wouldn't think of it, neither would Luffy. But Robin, Usopp, or Frankie, or even Law could suggest it, because like he was there too when it was formed. It could just be a very much along the lines of, well, how about you like get their contact information, their Den Den Mushi numbers, so that way down the line, if you need to, you can call them. End of story. Also, I really hope that it's Gambia's grandma, I believe, is the one that is the granny that they call a lot for advice. How the heck they survived the first half of the Grand Line is completely befuddled, but you know, and then how they even got to Dressrosa in the first place, survived that far, is very concerning in regards to the Bardo Club, on that advice, and with not having a proper navigator. I don't know what to say about any of that. But you know, just another interaction with her, because that was funny. Although supposedly she appears in Film Red, and I do remember there being a moment in Film Red where we see like a little old lady on a porch in a rocking chair listening to Uda's concert, and then she falls asleep. So I'm assuming that was supposed to be Gambia's grandma, back on possibly, well, because Bardo was in Logtown, so Logtown, so that would most likely be where she would be too, because that's where they grew up. Next up, a little bit more interested in this one, because like Bardo and Cavendish, we haven't really heard anything else about. Now we move on to Sai and the Hoppo Navy. So the last time canonically we did see Sai, because he didn't appear in Film Red or Stampede, or at least not that I saw. And the last time we saw him, which was actually the most recent, I believe, out of all of them, was at Reverie. We saw him there. We saw him and Leo interact when they had a little mini reunion there. And, you know, he sees Rebecca, and he's happy to see Rebecca, and he kind of gets to see some of the interactions between, you know, Rebecca and Vivi and Shirahoshi and such. So he got to see a little bit of that dynamic going on, and kind of like, I mean, like, Sai's a fairly intelligent person, and you know, he's fairly intelligent. And I mean, like, smarts aren't necessarily needed to be a pirate, but he's intelligent. You know, he's fairly intelligent. Also, he was kind of like groomed to become the next leader of the Hoppo Navy by, you know, Don Chinchou. Also, I don't think we ever get an interaction about what the heck happened to Sai's parents, Sai and Boo's parents, because it would imply, unfortunately, that the reason that it's going from Chinchou to Sai is that, you know, Sai's father is dead, because we never see him. His mom might still be alive, as opposed to the other anime thing where it's just like, oh, the mom died from some sort of illness when they were young. I'm like, okay, at the very least, in some of the anime or manga, it's like Aaron's mom in Attack on Titan, eaten by a Titan, Mika's mother, killed by slavers. In regards to, you know, Bleach, Misaki was killed by a hollow because other reasons. And then, you know, with One Piece, it's Usopp, you know, what happened with Belmer, yeah, we have no idea about Luffy's mom. Bachina died from an illness. Zoro's mom died from an illness. Sanji's mom died from poisoning and other complications. So just like, okay. for canon purposes, head canon purposes, Sai's mom's alive and fine. His dad is not around though. For my own head canon's sake. But so Sai and Leo got to see each other again. And Sai mentioned to Rebecca that it's just like, oh, well, we're here kind of, I guess, acting as like, guards for the guy that's in charge of, I think it's the Kano Kingdom. I think it's the kingdom that like the Hapu Navy is associated with. And he's there and he's like, well, we're kind of here acting as like escorts for the kingdom. You're pirates. I thought you had wanted posters and stuff like that. So I don't know what to say about that. But like they got he was there at the reverie and he saw the interaction between the three princesses, and then he's technically four princesses with, Mosheri being part of it as well. But also he saw the whole interaction between everything that happened with Charlos and Milzigard. So, and Shirahoshi and everything with that, and CP Aijizero showing up. So he saw a lot of that. He tried to hold Rebecca back when she wanted to go and try to fight against them. Which admittedly, if Rebecca ever had to fight any of the Celestial Dragons, I'm pretty... barring, I guess, maybe the Gorosei, I'm pretty sure she could take them on very easily, with her training and everything that she has. So he was there for that, but also him and Leo are aware of this connection between Vivi and Luffy, because he saw this interaction and probably heard parts of the interaction, and Leo very much heard parts of the interaction between Vivi and Rebecca and Shirahoshi and everything. So Sai, since he was at Reverie, this also applies to Leo, they were at Reverie, they would actually be able to give somewhat of an account as to what happened with Vivi and Cobra and whatever happened with that. Or maybe they were the ones that helped get Vivi out of there. That's also a possibility. Also, thrown with that, along with with Sai, there would be Boo and Don Chinchao and Baby 5, who is now Sai's wife. And so if Sai shows up again, then that means Baby 5 is most likely going to show up again. And help with fighting against whoever is the new enemy at that point in time, whether that's fighting against Blackbeard, whether that's fighting against the Marines or whatever. And again, the Hapu's, the Hapu Navy showing up would also be very good against, dealing with a bunch of the riffraff, because there's like 1,000 men, I think, if I remember correctly for the numbers, with that. So, again, them showing up, I would also really like. I mean, like, I hope that if they do end up doing this in the manga, where they show them all, appearing again, I hope we get like a very slight reference, like throw this just in the anime where we actually get like a drawing of, like just a slight thing where they show like something to show with like Baby 5 and Sai's wedding, because like that was adorable. With what happened with that in the manga, with the cover pages. Again, things that I wish got animated a lot more than they did would be the cover pages, cover series. But what we, they would be, good to show up with that. And Baby 5, well, okay, so I know that with the Seraphim, that Baby 5 was not captured. She was never captured by the Marines in this regard. So unless they were able to get their hands on her genetics some other way, I don't expect, Vegapunk to have been able to clone her devil fruit for the green blood. So, I mean, if he had the kind of one of the better options to give it to would have possibly been Mihawk's, S-Hawk, but I was trying to think if there would have been any other ones. Maybe give it to Crocodile. I've read one version of spoilers for stuff this week, and I'm not sure where I stand on it, so I'm not really going to reference it. Depending on stuff, it would be interesting to see, Baby 5 help deal with some of that stuff. No, she wouldn't necessarily be a huge match for any of the Seraphim themselves, but, depending on how everything goes, for all we know, the Seraphim might get destroyed at Egghead, or they do end up having to get dealt with later, and maybe it would end up being some of the different, Straw Hat Grand Fleet members have to deal with the Seraphim down the line, one way or another. That would be very interesting to see how that would go. Depending on if they're, if they survive the battle on Egghead, however that goes. Yeah, so I do want to see Baby Five again. I liked Baby Five a lot in Dressrosa. I liked her backstory. I liked how they set her up. And I like how she's like now kind of getting to be happy a little bit more with like Sai and his family and stuff. Not that she wasn't like happy or accepted among the, Donkey, amongst, the Doflamingo family and everything, but, now at the least she doesn't have to worry about, her captain trying to kill her husband, because her captain and her husband are the same person. And that would be not a good idea. Also just, she's just, Sai and Baby Five showing up and being able to do like combo attacks with like him using her, her turning into like the scythe or, the sword or whatever, like she would do with Buffalo, the way that they fought. Those, her and Sai fighting the same way would be perfectly normal. I mean, like, he's used to using polearm weapons and stuff like that, and it's not like she couldn't transform herself into a polearm weapon for him to use, and then, throws her, she does an attack, and then she just turns back into, her human self, and then, turns her arms into guns and fires at whoever they're fighting. So, it'll be interesting to see how that would go. Sai would be happy to see Luffy and the others again. Bardo would be overjoyed. Cavendish would be Cavendish and like somewhat snarky, but like, I am here because I was called, and I will not, rebuke my captain, Straw Hat. Yes, just like angry / trying to be, angry / annoyed Cavendish. Also just Cavendish and Bartolomeo going at each other's throats is sometimes entertaining to watch. Although admittedly out of all of, Bardo showing up in Film Red was fine, but if Cavendish had showed up in Film Red, that would have been funny too, with like him probably trying to fawn over Uta. That would have been funny. I'm not surprised he wasn't in it, but that would have been entertaining. So yeah, Sai would actually be able to give possibly some form of an account as to what happened at Reverie in regards to what happened with Vivi and Cobra and stuff like that, because he at least would have been there for part of it. Maybe not like actually witnessing whatever the supposed assassination attempt, well, successful assassination in regards to Cobra, was, but him and Leo may have been able to help get, Baby Five, help get, Vivi out of there, somehow get her onto, Borgen's flying teapot. So she would at least be safe in that regard. I don't really know exactly where else to fall with that. I can't think of anything else that would go along with that. But yeah, so the next one for the reunions would be the rest of the Grand Fleet. And then I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do for the next set of reunion videos. We'll see how that goes. It kind of depends. I'm kind of waiting to see what else happens in the manga before I do that. See like where stuff lands with like Shanks and the pirates and stuff, and the giant warrior pirates and stuff like that. With Dory and Broggy and stuff. Get a little bit more information on what's going on with that before I, do like the Shanks reunion stuff. So. And then I have like a whole kind of a villains reunion setup that I do kind of want to do at some point in time, but I haven't quite figured that out yet. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.